Yamaduma and Yuanara, Mamavanura and Paul. Greetings, everybody. My name is Uncle Paul Calcott. I'm a proud Wiradjuri man from central New South Wales in Australia, but I now live on beautiful Gubbi Gubbi Jinnaburra country on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. And before I start, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners who walked and cared for the land that we're all meeting on this week, the Linyard people. And I hope I pronounced that right. But we always acknowledge the ancestors and the traditional owners that created this land and moved and looked after it before we all arrived here. So today I'm here representing QAI, which is Queensland Advocacy for Inclusion in Queensland, and also Mob for Mob, who are the latest peak body representative group for First Nations people living with disability in Queensland. And today we're going to share with you some amazing resources that we have developed to support First Nations people with disabilities in understanding and having better knowledge of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disability. The exhibition that we're going to be sharing with you today is called Reflections of the UN CRPD. And why it came about was that often what happens is that resources for people with disabilities are often developed with a very colonial lens and often in an academic sort of lens. So what happens is in Australia, we have our First Nations people with disabilities where English is their third or fourth language, and often the disability is a cognitive impairment, which means that quite often the resources aren't accessible or not really fit for people to embrace them and see how they connect to them and what the worth is for them and how they can relate to them. So recently what we did, and we've done this before, I've been involved in using our artwork to demonstrate the UN CRPD, but this is the first time that through QAI and Mob for Mob that we've actually engaged a number of First Nations artists living with disability to develop individual artworks. And each of these artworks is that artist's perspective on a cultural perspective of what that particular article of the UN CRPD means to them. And it's a great way, it doesn't really give a full-on definition of that article, but it's a great way to start the conversation with community by putting it into a cultural perspective. So each of these artworks that we're going to share with you today as well, apart from being stunning, beautiful artworks, and I was very honoured to be one of the artists of the Noonaron group. That's the name of the group we engaged to develop these artworks. And Noonaron is a group of First Nations artists living with disabilities based up in Queensland. And but each of the artists, we also have alongside them a video of them explaining their artwork. So what we'll do, they'll be available to you as well, a little postcards, and the postcards will have a photo of the artwork, what that article is, and it'll also have a QR code by using your smartphone will take you to the actual video where you can see that artist telling the story of their artwork and how they feel it relates to the UN CRPD in their own words. But a couple of the ones we'll show you today that we will share with you have been animated. So this has been done through a grant that we received from the Queensland government. And we just really want to point out that it's been a wonderful experience that the Queensland government, two departments in particular, the Motor Vehicle Accident Insurance Commission and the Department of Seniors and Disability, have actually embraced this way now of sharing resources and making resources more accessible. And we've built a great relationship with them, and we're really proud of the fact that as a small group, we're starting to really have an impact on how these resources are being shared and to see government bodies see the value in translating their resources into traditional art and storytelling. So that what we have First Nations people with disabilities supporting and developing resources for First Nations people with disabilities. So I really hope that you enjoy these artworks and these videos that we'll go through, and please, you'll be reminded. But at the end of this, please come and have a yarn with us. Myself and some of the artists will be in the cafeteria, and we would love to have a talk to you further and share our experience in developing these resources. But it's just a case of it's the first time that the UNCRPD will really be accessible to our communities and start the conversations and help our community really understand how it relates to them on a cultural level and a personal level, and why it's so important that the UNCRPD is made accessible to our communities. So thank you very, very much, and I hope that you do enjoy these videos. But I think we'll hear a word from our amazing chairperson, Byron Aubrey, and then we'll go into the videos. But please feel free to come and have a coffee and a yarn with us if you want to talk about this further. Thank you very, very much.
My name is Byron Albury, and I am an Aboriginal man with disability. I am the President of Queensland Advocacy for Inclusion and the Chairperson of Mob for Mob Queensland, a peak body within Australia. Queensland Advocacy for Inclusion ensures the representation of First Nations people and people with disability in our Constitution. We recognise that since colonisation, successive governments and their policies have systematically disadvantaged and marginalised First Nations peoples, and we are a group that is disproportionately affected by poverty, unemployment, chronic illness, and high levels of incarceration, and disability related issues such as mental illness. Disability interacts with intergenerational trauma. The ongoing force of colonisation continues to impact First Nations people who remain a minority within a minority. QAI is committed to working respectfully with First Nations people and organisations, along with communities, to realise human rights. We have partnered with Mob for Mob to produce this art exhibition, Reflections of the UN CRPD. Australia's First Nations culture is strong and the oldest living culture on earth. This is an inclusive culture which continues to the present day. This culture of inclusiveness is a powerful anecdote of intersectional inequity. We will be at the United Nations Vienna Cafe immediately after this event, if you would like to come and meet us.
Article 3, Principles. The main beliefs of this convention are that you as a person living with a disability should be treated with respect and dignity and not discriminated against, be included in your community and treated with the same rights as everybody else, given equal opportunity to contribute, equal respect of men's and women's business, respect for children with disability and support them to feel proud of who they are. Yamadumaran, Yuanara, Mamaba Nanaron Paul. Duramadilya, Bardu Wiradjuri. Hello, I'm Uncle Paul, proud Wiradjuri man, now living on Gubbi Gubbi Jinnaburra country on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. Principle 1 is a person with a disability is to be treated with respect and as an individual with the same rights as everybody else and live their own life. Principle 2, non-discrimination. You can't be excluded or not allowed to participate in community events and groups just because you have a disability. Principle 3, full participation and inclusion. To be able to join in and have a say about what happens in your community. The same opportunities as others and to be valued as part of your community. Principle 4, acceptance that people with disability are diverse and part of many different communities and social and cultural groups. Principle 5, equality of opportunity to access education and cultural knowledge, jobs and sports, men's and women's business, and any barriers that prevent this need to be removed. Principle 6, accessibility. A person with a disability has the right to access services and supports that help keep them strong and access and participate in all areas of their community. Principle 7, equality between men's and women's business and respect that both are equally important. Principle 8, respect for children with disability, and that they should have a say in their lives and their futures, and supported to be the best that they can.
Hello, I'm Auntie Leela, Constable, and I'm a Wiradjuri woman from New South Wales, Australia, and this is my artwork. Article 6, UN CRPD, Women with a Disability. The government and lawmakers agreed to protect the rights and freedoms of women and girls living with disability. Women and girls have the right to feel safe and shielded and protected from discrimination and abuse. These laws protecting women and girls need to be told to everyone in community and held up. This is my story about pre-colonisation, nice, bright, happy times, lots of food, lots of dancing, community, language, just abundant food for everybody. And these are the song lines that we use to meet and have a big corroboree. They're our ancestors' hands that represent the ancestors, beautiful fresh water. It was just like a paradise on earth. When this country was colonised and the land taken, the women especially were treated in the most despicable way that you could imagine. Not only did they take their babies away and use your imagination with what they did, they took their men, and the women were left to fend for themselves with what little they had. That's why this area is all grey, and there's the chains that they put around men's necks. They just took everyone's dignity, and for the last 200 odd years, that has been the story of Australian history with Black Australia. Now, in the missions, they come to save everyone, but they just institutionalise people a lot too. They wouldn't let them practice culture or language as well. So, you know, even though they protected them in a way, they did a lot of damage as well. But if we come down here, this is today. And if you can see these little handprints, big ones, that represents our ancestors and their strength. And everyone with Aboriginal blood has this pull towards culture and language and a pride now, and we are learning so much that has been forgotten, and I thank my titters for that, because how strong were these women to keep this all going. You know, I'm so proud to be a Black Aboriginal woman in Australia.
I'd like to introduce Jai Cornwell. Jai Cornwell's my son. This is an Article 8 for the UNCRPD, and this is about awareness raising for achievements for people with disabilities. But this is Jai's story. He'd like to explain. What is this here, Jai?
My son.
That's your dad?
Yes.
So that's me. What am I doing?
Yeah.
Am I helping? Helping other people?
Yes.
And this is a footy field?
Well.
And this would be?
Me.
Yep. And your best friend?
That's good.
So you've got a good network of friends here on the Sunshine Coast?
Yeah. On the coast.
Cool. And then up here, this is very important.
Important.
Very important. What is this?
Where?
This is the Murchie River.
Yes.
Okay. And then up here, this is the Sunshine Coast. So is this where you live?
Yeah, my life.
Awesome. And this here is a part of your martial arts group.
Yes.
What's your martial arts group called?
Right course.
It's IAMA,
Hey.
All-Inclusive Martial Arts.
No.
So you're actually a black belt, first degree. You've been training for 5 years, and you're now helping other people
And the people.
to achieve their goals.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes.
And then over here we've got, who we've got here?
First one, I got Paul.
They're your
Thank
uncles.
you.
These are your uncles in Dreamtime, watching over to make sure you're safe, and your friends.
And Frank. First one,
I'm still at the gradings, so this is your gradings.
that's Riley.
It sounds like a really cool story, Jai, of all the achievements that you've made,
Yeah.
and to identify the importance of people with disabilities and the contributions back to their communities.
Yes.
So I'm very proud of you.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Auntie Paula Wooten. My country's Tharawal and Wiradjuri, and I've painted about Article 9. It's about accessibility. For people with disabilities to stay happy and healthy, they've got to have access to elders. This is a symbol for an elder. It's important to have access to not only healthy foods, but also water as well. These symbols here depict people with disabilities. And all this healthy bush tucker, I'll just show you, we have lemon myrtle here, which is actually one of our medicine plant foods. We've got bunya nuts, mediums, Davidson plums, Burdekin plums, bush cherries, and also gumby gumby is actually one of our medicine plants as well. So to be able to have that all accessible is really healthy for our people.
Article 14, Liberty and Security of the Person. This means you have the right to live your life the way you want to and to feel safe in society. This is whether you are a man, a woman, part of the LGBTIQ+ or Seven Spirit community, brother boy or sister girl community, or multicultural community, or what your religious or spiritual beliefs are. You have the right to be respected and live your own life. Yamadumaran, Yuanara, Mamaba Nanaran Paul. Dirramadilia, Bardu, Wiradjuri. Hello, I'm Uncle Paul, proud Wiradjuri man, now living on Gubbi Gubbi Jinnaburra country on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. This article is important for me as a gay man. The introduction of Western religion and social values had a huge impact on how a community viewed the LGBTIQ+ or Many Spirits community, as I prefer to be known. Many people became disconnected from family and community because of these introduced values and beliefs. LGBTIQ+ First Nations people living with disability are a minority within a minority within a minority. This has a huge impact on your sense of belonging and value in mainstream society. The suicide rate for young people in our community is 3 times higher than non-Indigenous community. Could a contributing factor to this be the lack of support and acknowledgement of diverse sexuality and gender within our population? The acknowledgement of Article 14 as a basic human right has had a positive impact, and with the legalisation of same-sex marriage has demonstrated that our relationships are as valued and respected as heterosexual relationships. Having a voice and input into how we are supported and the services we need is leading to better inclusion. However, some of our LGBTIQ+ mob are still living in isolated situations without respectful supports. In Australia, we have made huge positive changes. However, sadly, in many countries, this article of the UN CRPD is limited as to how it is interpreted and implemented, with many LGBTIQ+ people who don't have the right to this liberty and security.
My name is Eve Kitchener and I'm from the Wiradjuri Nation. Article 15 to 16, freedom from torture, cruelty, violence and abuse, and my story is about healing. Telling my story today, how I was removed as a child from my nation, my people, my family, and I was taken to welfare homes, and I started off as a little kid in those homes where I started to be abused. I was smacked around and belted and never shown an ounce of love. And then I drifted up to other homes as I got older because I started rebelling and resisting, and I became very institutionalised. I was tortured, put in dungeons. There was a Parramatta girls' home that had the old dungeons from back in the day, and probably from the turn of the 18th century or so, built by the convicts. But they used it for us young girls that rebelled, and the Parramatta girls' home, of course. And I was taken to the dungeon lots of times for rebelling. And it was mostly because of the way we were treated. And the thing about the dungeon was when you got down there, you didn't know what you were going to expect when you got there. Well, that's where the torture began. You were raped, bashed, kicked, punched, and then of course I had boiling water thrown on me by a male officer that hated me because I resisted, and I used to stand up to them, but he used to say things like, "I'll break you, Kitchener," and I used to say back to him, "Go, have a good try," but I never ever broke down in front of him. That all happened when they weren't there, because I wouldn't show them any part of me, any part of myself, So I've developed severe depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's a lot of other things that I have wrong with me as well, due to to those places, what they did to me. But as I grew older and got out of there, and it took many years because it wasn't an instant, like getting myself healed. It took a long time, like years and years of trying to find my family, my people. And then I started painting as a way of sort of releasing all the feelings that I had inside, for what happened to me. And the painting started helping me to tell my story. So this painting here is about my story. It's about the spirit people. The three spirits you see in this painting, the three spirits were always with me on my journey from the beginning. And the spirits there guided me lots of times when I was down and out and depressed, and at the end of my life where I felt like doing myself in. I didn't want to be here, but these spirits were there, and I knew they were guiding me not to do that. And I put it onto the canvas and painted it, and I've put on like a track, around up the top here, and how I started out. And then I met these spirits on the way of my early journey, and then the big spirit up the top here, the main spirit, is sort of like me, it represented virtually me. And the little spirits down the bottom were the spirits that would not let go of me and kept pulling me not to kill myself all those years ago. And it's brought me down here and past all these dreaming circles, and it brought me down to the bottom here, and these bottom here are elders that I met on the way, and the elders are the ones that also spoke to me and talked to me about how I could be healed and how they helped me to become better than I am now, and how to get rid of the feelings of suicide, and make me feel that I was just as important on this planet as anyone else. So yeah, I've met some really good elders that were really strong elders that have helped me and made me, virtually not made me, but guided me to be the person I am today, and for me to be healed. And I would hate for anyone ever to go through what I have lived. unless you've lived something so bad, I don't think you could know unless you lived it yourself. But I've survived. I'm a survivor, and that's my story.
Article 17, protecting the person. No one has the right to treat you disrespectfully because of your disability. You have the right to be respected and valued and be part of the yarning circle just as you are. Yama, my name is Auntie Helene Burns. I'm freshwater Wiradjuri, Three Rivers country and saltwater woman, Bardu Island and South Sea Island descendant. The five-pointed star in the centre of the piece represents the northern star that my ancestors used to navigate from island to island as they settled. This star is also part of the traditional headdress of the Torres Strait Islander people. Around the border, the star is missing from the headdresses to indicate that some disabilities are hidden. This correlates with the arrival of Western culture, where disability was considered a deficit. The dots and the wavy lines represent the journey and the barriers that people with disabilities experience to find their place below me. The sun and the moon represent the aspects of creation where we are all made, but some people feel the need to hide and not be seen. The stars of the Southern Cross represent our ancient dreaming stories. People with disabilities have always been part of our story and our community. Article 17 is important because when our mob come together, people with disabilities have always been valued and had a place in the yarning circle. People would come from all over to share their stories and contribute to the community. The single foot and circle represent somebody with a disability. These stories are shared and included in the history of our mob, adding to the resilience of a culture that is one of the longest recognised cultures in the world. Bringing this all together is the image of Lightning Man, whose voice is thunder, and he represents transformation and change, which is needed when we speak about inclusivity and diversity.
Yamadumaran, Yuanara, Mama Banana and Paul, Dirmadilia, Bardu Wiradjuri. Hello everyone, my name is Uncle Paul Calcott. I'm a proud Wiradjuri man living with disability, and my painting is about Article 19 and Article 20, living independently, being included in community and personal mobility. My painting is inspired by the fossilised footprints that were found in New South Wales here in Australia that date back probably 50 or 60,000 years. And what they show here is a one-legged man using a walking stick who's participating in a hunt with able-bodied men. And he's chasing down emu and kangaroo. Now they measured these footprints and they reckon that he was keeping pace with these able-bodied people. So what that tells me is that in this country, we have it in our DNA that 60,000 years ago we were practicing inclusion, that this person was included in the community, they had a role, and he had the mobility aids to support him, which is a walking stick, which I like to think that our mob, therefore, were the first people to invent mobility aids in the whole world. So that's mine. It's about living independently and about participating, and it shows that this was happening thousands and thousands of years ago here, and it should still be happening and should still be continuing. It's close to me because I use a walking stick in my language called Dengue, and so I'm really happy to present this and hope that it encourages other people to participate in the hunt. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ali. I'm a proud member of the Yingambi tribe, and I'm here to present my painting under Section 24, the right to education. My paintings are regarding my son, who has a disability, and that he not only has the right to an education through mainstream, TAFE or uni, but to also learn his cultural rights and knowledge. My painting starts with myself as a sole parent trying to raise 2 children with disabilities. So we've reached out for help and support, being told by community that he can do whatever he puts his mind to, that he can do his men's business, he can do his unisex business, as boys are not allowed to do women's business. So we have him going out and doing bush tucker, doing hunting, and then having a happy ceremony when he got his first job, was accepted into having that job, and that journey was finished with the dragonfly. Cultural makes a big difference when it comes to Indigenous children and their learning as well as adults. Education isn't just about school, TAFE, uni, it's about cultural and acceptance into learning their history, and it makes a big difference in the end. They get to know themselves for who they really are and what they're all about. They don't feel lost.
Hello, I'm Auntie Paula Wooten. I'm from Tharawal and Wiradjuri country. I've painted Articles 25 and 26. It's health and good services. You have the right to be able to access culturally respectful services and supports and equipment that will help you stay healthy, independent and strong in your areas of your life, such as relationships, family, community and culture. I used to care for my son, so this symbol depicts people with disabilities, and Article 25 and 26 depicts that they have the right to have access to services and culturally appropriate services, support and equipment and aids. To stay strong and healthy, they also need access and support with family, have access to people in the community and also their culture.
Thank you for attending our side event today for the Reflections of the UN CRPD art exhibition. Don't forget, we're waiting for you to come and say hello to us all in the Vienna Cafe.